और इस वक्त सीधे आपको ले चलते हैं राजधानी दिल्ली, जहां पर नई व्यापार नीति की घोषणा की जा रही है।
Chairperson of the FIO, captains of industry, senior officials of the Government of India, friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. It is definitely a privilege to be standing here and for the fifth consecutive year giving the foreign trade policy the annual supplement for the year 2013-14. 4 years ago, as you would recall, we had come out with a 5-year foreign trade policy, and it was with the particular objective to have both stability and predictability in our foreign trade policy regime. We were addressing at that time a very challenging scenario because of the global financial crisis, the economic crisis, the downturn, and very sharp contraction in global trade. We ourselves were deep in the red territory at minus 39.6 in May 2009, and we had to take some urgent measures to arrest that fall and reverse that trend. And therefore, what we did in the foreign trade policy did help us reasonably, to some extent, to achieve the objectives despite the global crisis. As we are now approaching the end of this 5-year period, it is therefore the time to take stock of how we have performed. At the same time, recognizing the challenges which have not disappeared, what I refer to. The global economy continues to remain in a very difficult crisis. And this time what we have seen is the severity is much more, therefore the adverse impact on all economies, major and minor. We have seen the Eurozone crisis continuing. Even a small country turbulence is causing global concerns. Last year the global economy did not grow well. The projections of this year, though initially in the month of January, both from the World Bank, the IMF, were reasonably good, promising healthy growth, but there has been a downward revision even for the world economic growth. The World Economic Outlook day before yesterday has revised it downward to 3.2. Same is the case with the global trade. It has not grown well, as Commerce Secretary was mentioning. There has been a sharp fall in demand, and now the WTO has, in the revised estimates, brought it down from 3.7% to 2.5%, which is less than half of the previous 20 years average. This, you'll agree, is a disturbing trend, and we do view exports not only as a valuable source of foreign exchange which this country needs, but also to help in stabilizing the current account deficit. It's also a key contributor of the economic activity, both in terms of investments and job creation. In the financial year 2012-13, I'm happy to say that the efforts of the ministry, our senior officials, as well as the industry, the exports organizations, finally helped us in the last quarter to at least come out of a continuous decline of 9 months. Our exports did cross 300 billion. The 300.60 billion to be precise, but compared to previous year, there has been a fall of 1.76%. It is therefore a matter of concern that the trade deficit has increased from US dollars 183.4 billion for the previous year to 190.91, almost 191 billion US dollars. When we look at the exports, we are able to discern a shifting trend as Indian exports to Asia, Africa, and Latin America during 2012-13 reached 195.27 billion, accounting for 65% of India's exports. This is a significant development not only in the context of the growing South-South trade, which has assumed a new dynamic, but it is also a result of a conscious effort which was integral to the policy unveiled in the year 2009, that's of market diversification, when we very carefully looked at what was happening in the world. It was true that India was not very effectively or strongly engaged in Africa, Latin America, and some parts in Asia. But because of the decline and the sharp contraction in Europe and Americas, it was clear to us that we could not have waited for the recovery to take place, and that too to the pre-crisis level in these regions of the world. Therefore, we had to look at other regions, and we went in for market diversification. In one stroke, as you would recall, under different schemes, we looked at 39 markets, adding more big markets later on as part of the diversification process. That does not mean, and I would like to just clarify here, that when we went in for market diversification, it did not mean that we were disengaging from the traditional destinations. We were engaging the entire world, and that has definitely helped us. Also, the value-added exports, as engineering exports today account for 57 billion, and textiles with 26 billion, and pharmaceuticals with 15 billion plus. That shows that there is a clear thrust of value-added exports which is going to increase in the coming years. The agricultural exports, by their very nature, are sensitive as they have a direct bearing on the domestic price situation, as well as demands of the agro-based industry. However, we have always strived to strike a balance in securing the interests of our farmers and consumers. On account of the good harvests in the previous years, exports of all agricultural commodities has been freely allowed. Export of non-basmati rice, wheat and wheat products, which was banned in 2007, has been opened up. Wheat exports and rice exports have reached new high. India has become the largest rice exporter in the world and the second largest wheat exporter of the world. We have exported more than 6 million tons of wheat since September 2011, and except pulses and edible oils, as I mentioned, exports of all agricultural commodities is free. We have also taken a series of measures to promote export of organic agricultural produce, and in order to provide a predictability for long-term contracting, we have taken a policy view to exempt export of certain processed and value-added products so that they are freely exportable even in the eventuality of a restriction on exports of basic farm produce. These would include cheese, ghee, butter, casein, and the casein products. Even if in the eventuality of a ban on export of milk and milk products. In the last 4 years, we have aggressively pursued a policy of trade liberalization and engaged with all dynamic parts of the world. We concluded, as you know, a comprehensive economic partnership agreement with ASEAN. The agreement on trade in goods was concluded in August 2009, and on the eve of the commemorative summit, the 20th years of India-ASEAN engagement in December, when the ASEAN leaders came to Delhi on the invitation of our Prime Minister, the successful completion of Investment and Services Agreement 2 was announced, making it a comprehensive CECA between India and ASEAN. We signed robust agreements with South Korea, with Japan, with Malaysia. We are presently engaged with trade negotiations with a number of important countries and regions of the world, including the revision of our agreement, the CECA, with Singapore, We are currently talking with Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We are looking at the SACU region and COMESA countries in Africa, and also a revision of our preferential trade agreement with the Mercosur group of countries in Latin America. I have just returned from Brussels, along with the Commerce Secretary and the senior officials, and I'm happy to share with you, because there are speculative reports which we keep on reading, positive or otherwise. You hear it from me that the negotiations for the India-EU broad-based trade and investment agreement are progressing very well. Both India and EU have given a clear mandate to the negotiators for concluding a balanced and fair agreement at the earliest. I am confident that over the next couple of months, we should see not only intensification of this process, but also bringing it to a meaningful closure, having an agreement which is both ambitious as well as balanced. Over the last few months, we have been engaged in an active consultation with all the apex chambers of our industry. The process, I must say, has not been driven from the top. It has been driven from the very base of this pyramid. That's by the exports councils, by the industry, by the chambers, by our senior officials, the DGFT and his team, and the Commerce Secretary and other officials. And I would like to compliment them that we have followed an approach which is inclusive, which is consultative, which takes on board the concerns and the suggestions of the industry as we try to address a situation which is definitely very challenging and disturbing. After the detailed dialogue which we have had, the consultation process, it concluded with the consultations with the Ministry of Finance, Secretary of Revenue, CBEC, both chairperson, members, other senior officials, and then the ministerial meeting between the Finance Minister and myself. After detailed discussions, I would like to place on record my appreciation for the support that has been extended for today's announcements. In June last year, I had outlined 7 pillars which define our approach to foreign trade. A, giving a focused thrust to employment-intensive industry as we view exports, not only in terms of their economic contribution, but as a means of generating gainful employment. B, to encourage domestic manufacturing for inputs to export industry and reduce the dependence on imports. C, promote technological upgradation of exports to retain a competitive edge in global markets. D, persist with a strong market diversification strategy to hedge the risk against global uncertainty. E, encourage exports from northeastern region given its special place in India's economy. F, to provide incentives for manufacturing of green goods, recognizing the imperatives of building capacities for environmental sustainability. And lastly, endeavor to reduce transaction costs through procedural simplification and reduction of human interface. We have persisted with the same approach in this year's policy announcements. Now I would like to share with you the measures which we are taking this year for giving more support and fillip to India's exports. The zero duty EPCG scheme has been an important instrument for increasing technology intensity of our exports. This scheme was scheduled to expire in March 2013. In a major decision, we have decided not only to extend the zero duty EPCG scheme beyond March 2013, but also to merge it with 3% EPCG scheme. Now the zero duty EPCG scheme will be available to all sectors. We have also undertaken a major simplification of the EPCG scheme, details of which will be available through separate notification. Further, for units located in J&K, Northeast and Sikkim, exporters would be required to achieve 25% of normal export obligations under the scheme. Time period for completion of export obligations for BIFR units has been extended to 9 years instead of 6 years in normal course. We would like to encourage our exporters to procure capital goods domestically. Therefore, we have decided that if an EPCG authorization holder procures capital goods from domestic market, the export obligation of such authorization shall be reduced by 10%. As the textile minister, I am also conscious of the demands and aspirations of the textile industry. Hitherto, any exporter who had obtained benefits under the Technology Upgradation Fund schemes that stuffs was ineligible for obtaining benefits under zero duty EPCG scheme. We have now decided that even if an exporter has obtained benefits under TUFS, he or she will be eligible for benefits to zero duty EPCG scheme also. This, I hope, will provide a push to this labor intensive sector, that's the textile industry. In December last year, we had introduced a new scheme, Incremental Export Incentive Scheme, for a period of 3 months, under which an additional incentive of 2% of FOB value of exports was provided on the incremental exports during that period over the corresponding period of the previous year. This scheme was made available for exports to the United States of America, Europe and Asia. Recognizing the popularity of the scheme, I have decided to extend the benefits of this scheme for this year as well, and to cover, in addition, 53 countries of Latin America and Africa, apart from the earlier notified markets which I have mentioned. High interest costs have been a major impediment in increasing both investment and exports. We had extended 2% interest subvention to the SMEs, specified labor-intensive sectors, covering handlooms, handicrafts, carpets, SMEs, toys, sports goods, processed agricultural products and ready-made garments till 31st of March 2013. After a review of the export scenario and concerned over the contraction that was taking place, I and the Finance Minister discussed this matter, and in December we had extended this facility up to March 2014. Now we have taken a conscious decision to extend this facility to textile sector as mentioned in our article and articles listed in chapter 63 of ITC, and 101 items of the engineering sector. This adds to the 134 engineering sector items which were announced in December, taking the number of the engineering sector coverage to 235. We have added Norway as a new market under the Focus Market Scheme, now taking the total number of markets to 125. We have also added Venezuela for the eligibility under the Special Focus Market Scheme with 4% duty credit, thus taking the total number of countries under this scheme to 50. Further, 47 new items have been added to the Market Link Focus Product Scheme, and benefit for exports to USA and EU for chapters 61 and 62 pertaining to the textile sector has been extended by another 1 year until March 2014. We have also decided to add 126 items of engineering, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and textile sector to the Focus Product Scheme, and 2 new items have been added in the Vishesh Krishi and Gram Udyog Yojana scheme, VKGUY. We have also decided to incentivize high-tech products with effect from 30th June 2013, for which a separate notification would be issued. It has been announced that the scrips under Chapter 3 schemes will be eligible for utilization for offsetting existing duty, excise duty, in case the exporter procures from domestic market to give a focused thrust for manufacturing in domestic industry. This year, I have further allowed utilization of duty credit scrip issued under FMS, FPS and VKGUI for payment of service tax on procurement of services. All duty credit scrips under Chapter 3 will also be eligible for the payments of application fee, composition fee and value-wise shortfall in export obligations. The benefits will be available to the original holder of the duty credit scrip. Last year, we had allowed transferability of the status holder incentive scrip subject to the condition that the transferee is a status holder manufacturer. We have extended the scope of this transferability and allowed such transfers within a group company of a status holder, provided the group company is a manufacturer. The duty credit scrips equivalent to 10% of free foreign exchange earned is issued under SFIR scheme, but currently it is allowed for imports relating to any services sector businesses of the applicant. However, recognizing that a group company of service sector provider may also be engaged in manufacturing, we have decided to allow usage of SFIR scrips for imports of domestic procurement. Now, it's important that it is both for import but also for domestic procurement of capital goods, including spares related to manufacturing sector business of such service providers. In order to encourage export of services, especially in the tourism sector, we are allowing the use of SFIR scrips for import of or domestic procurement of motor cars, SUVs, all-purpose vehicles for hotels, travel agents, tour operators, and companies owning or operating golf resorts for tourist purposes. However, the users will be required to submit proof of registration of tourism purposes within 6 months, and these vehicles will not be allowed to be imported under the EPCG scheme. The status holder exporting agricultural products are allowed agri-infrastructure incentive scrips equivalent to 10% of FOB value of agricultural exports. Currently, this is subject to actual user condition and is non-transferable. This year, we are allowing transferability of these scrips from the status holder to supporting manufacturer of the status holder. In order to promote exports of agricultural produce, minor forest produce, Gram Udyog products, forest-based products, VKGUY scheme provides for duty credit scrip equivalent to 5% of FOB value of exports. The scheme has a stipulation that in case the exporter is eligible for duty drawback of more than 1%, VKGUY scheme scrips will be available at a reduced rate of 3%. We are doing away with this condition of reduction of VKGUY rates, and all exporters can now avail benefits under VKGUY and get 5% duty scrips. At present, duty-free imports of specified 10 raw materials for manufacture of handloom made-ups, for cotton made-ups, or man-made made-ups is allowed up to 5% of the FOB value of preceding year in case of handloom made-up, and 1% of FOB value in case of cotton made-ups for man-made made-ups. Now, in addition to 10 raw materials allowed earlier, embroidery threads, sewing threads, poly-wadding materials, quilted materials, and printed tags have also been allowed within these duty-free limits. For enhancing the exports of sports goods, import of 16 specified items is allowed duty-free to the extent of 3% of FOB value of exports in the preceding year. We have now expanded the list to include more items. There are several advanced authorization and EPCG authorizations of the past which are pending for closure on account of non-fulfillment of export obligations. In order to clean up all such cases, a one-time relief has been provided to such authorization holders who would be able to close these cases on payment of customs duty and interest, and the total amount of duty and interest shall not exceed 2 times of the amount of the duty saved. In order to make IT exports more flexible, we have extended the facility of work from home to STPI and EOUs. We have also allowed import of cars and vehicles at ICD at Faridabad and the Innor port. The Special Economic Zone scheme has been a key instrument for promoting exports from India. Today, 389 SEZs have been notified, of which 170 are functional. The SEZs employ over 1 million of our citizens. There has been an investment of over 2.36 lakh crores in SEZs, and exports from SEZs have seen a dramatic jump from 22,840 crores in 2005-6 to rupees 4 lakh and 76,000 crores in 2012-13. That's registering a growth of 2,000% over a 7-year period. Exports from SEZs during the last financial year have increased by 31%. Undoubtedly, these are significant achievements, but the SEZ scheme has not been able to realize its full potential. We have undertaken a comprehensive review of the SEZ policy after intense stakeholder consultations, and after a 1-year-long process, today I am happy to announce a package of reforms for reviving investor interest in SEZs. We have taken a note of the fact that there are acute difficulties in aggregating large tracts of uncultivable land which is vacant and contiguous, and we have therefore decided to reduce the minimum land area requirement by half for different categories for SEZs. For multi-product SEZ, the area has been brought down from 1,000 hectares to 500 hectares, and for sector-specific SEZs, it has been brought down to 50 hectares from existing 100 hectares. Currently, a single product SEZ is allowed to come up in a land area of 50 hectares, while a multi-product SEZ requires minimum 500 hectares of land. In order to provide greater flexibility in operation and efficiency in the use of infrastructure, it has now been decided that for every additional 50 hectares of contiguous area, an additional sector would be allowed on a graded scale to be added in the existing SEZ itself. Further flexibility to set up additional units in sector-specific SEZs has been provided by introducing a sectoral broadbanding to encompass similar or related areas under the same sector. While existing policy allows for parcels of land with pre-existing structures not in commercial use to be considered as vacant land of SEZ, it has now been decided that addition of such pre-existing structures and activities being undertaken after the notification would be eligible for duty benefits similar to any other activity in the SEZs. IT exports constitute a significant part of India's exports, and IT SEZs have made a significant contribution in this direction. We have decided that there should be no minimum land requirement for setting up ITES SEZs, and only minimum built-up area criteria would be needed to be met by IT SEZ developers. Minimum built-up area requirements have also been considerably relaxed, with the requirement of 1 lakh square meters to be applicable for 7 major cities: Mumbai, Delhi NCR, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, Pune, and Kolkata. For the other Class B cities, minimum built-up area would be 50,000 square meters, while for other cities, all other cities, it will be only 25,000 square meters built-up area, and that norm will be made applicable. I am confident that these measures will give a boost to the IT sector, SEZs, in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, creating employment and growth. We have received feedback from SEZ units that they are placed at a severe disadvantage in the absence of exit policy. we have now decided to allow transfer of ownership of SEZ units, including sale. It may be recalled that we had constituted a committee for addressing the issue of high transaction costs, which led to the reduction of the transaction cost by 2,100 crores. Subsequently, some more measures were taken, which have further reduced the transaction costs by another 395 crores. I am happy to announce the constitution of the second task force on transaction costs, which will submit its report within 6 months. Last year, we had announced introduction of e-BRC system, that's the bank realization certificates, in the DGFT. I am happy to share with you that a BRC system has been successfully implemented by the DGFT, and the requirement of physical copy of BRC has been dispensed with, and use of e-BRC has been made mandatory since last year. So far, banks have successfully uploaded 31.2 lakh bank realization certificates on the DGFT server, and this will be a significant step in reducing the transaction costs for the exporters. Exporters can print BRC from the DGFT website and submit it to any department which can verify accuracy of the data from the DGFT website. This will reduce not only the requirement of interface with public functionaries, but will also result in significant saving in costs. DGFT has received requests from many state governments for sharing of this data for automating VAT refund process. Several other measures have been taken for simplification of procedures and documentation, details of which are available in the highlights of the policy, which will be distributed now. It has also been decided to dispense with the requirement of submission of physical form of export promotion copy of shipping bill to the regional authority of DGFT in order to obtain export obligation discharge certificate in case of advance authorization, duty-free import authorization, and EPCG scheme. Ladies and gentlemen, these measures which I have announced have been, after careful consideration, intense consultations, which I did allude to, but you also have to appreciate the constraints which the government is facing. We are conscious of the need to enhance exports so that we can address the real challenge of bringing down the trade account deficit, which directly impacts the current account deficit because of the rising costs of the imports of certain commodities, including petroleum and gas. We have to remain conscious, the exports councils, the industry, and all those who are part of this process, that we have to make a special effort, make best use of the interventions, the incentives, and the support that is being provided by the government. I hope that with the measures that we have announced, we will see better results in 2013. Thank you.
We will have two things which is not listed in the invitation card. One is that there will be a photo opportunity for all of you. We'll just release the highlights and the. May I request the Honorable Minister to release a copy of the highlights, sir? Thank you very much, sir, for this indulgence which was not listed there. The second item that is not listed in the timetable, but with the permission of the Minister, I will mention that. The minister announced about EBRC. EBRC, we would like this to be a single phase interaction between all exporters and the government. When I say the government, it is both the central government and the state governments. It's my privilege to announce today that one state government will be exchanging the MOU. May I request our additional DG, Shri DK Singh, to please extend the copy of the MOU with the government of Maharashtra, whose representative would have come. Kindly please, in presence of... टाइम नहीं होगा जी. हाँ, प्लीज सामने आ जाइए. प्लीज कम सर. Will you take some questions, sir?
All right, that was Commerce and Industry Minister Anand Sharma announcing the foreign trade policy. He was also talking about the measures that have been introduced in this policy to try and give a fillip to export sector. It's also to support the export sector. Just to take you through some of those, the 0% duty on EPCG scheme has been extended from beyond March 2013. It's also been merged with the 3% EPCG scheme, and it's been simplified as well. Notification for that will be coming out soon. Also, there have been measures to try and promote the capital goods domestically, the industry domestically, and eligibility under the focus market scheme has been increased to encompass more countries. And reviving investor interest in SEZs has also been taken care of. Minimum land requirements halved depending on the type of SEZ. So he was giving up a roundup of the kind of measures that have been taken in this policy to try and revive exports and also to try and support the export sector, looking at the current account deficit and the trade deficit that the country is facing. To bridge those deficits, it's an important step of this policy is going to be an important step in that direction. With that, we're going to close this bulletin here, but thank you for joining us. Namaskar.